You are watching the video version of the Marketing Should Be Fun podcast. We are so glad that you are here. If you prefer to listen to podcasts, you can find the Marketing Should Be Fun show on any of your favorite podcast platforms, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else. But most of all, we're so glad you're here, and I hope that you enjoy today's conversation. Well, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Should Be Fun. My name's Austin Savage, and I'm here with my good friend and business partner, Kelsey Zarko. Kelsey,
nice.
Welcome back to the show. Hello. How are you?
Thanks. I'm so glad to be restored to your good friend standing. I'm better already because of that.
All is right in the world.
It's true.
I feel like we're settled. We're on good foundation for a great episode.
Got a
it's
good
gonna
feeling.
Be awesome.
Yep.
But you know what? Today, let's just jump straight in to what I'm sure will be an exhilarating, a memorable, and unforgettable this or that, since you're bringing the question.
Okay, here it is. We hinted at this last time and we didn't go there. So we're going to go there today. It's Monday, March 11th, as we're recording this. We've sent out our team-wide bracket invitations for March Madness. The scene has set.
We did.
We are ready. So my this or that question today is, are you hoping to see like just some really good games and kind of a team that often is good win? Or are you hoping for like another year of upsets all around?
Oh, man. That is a good question. There's
Thank you.
A lot of conversation about this.
Yeah, I worked really hard on it.
I worked so hard on this question.
I did. I was like, it has to be March Madness. What can I say that won't make me sound like I don't know sports?
Totally. And you know what? The tournament will be starting the day that we share this. So that was good planning on your part. Let's go.
Yes.
I think that's really interesting because like there are, like we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, but there are some clear favorites this year for March Madness of people who are like, you know, these are like clearly some of the best teams. Mm-hmm. But there's been so much back and forth throughout the season of like teams that should have won but didn't, and like just teams that are kind of like leading in their own right. I think that there's going to be a lot of surprises, but it's like so many teams that might be lower seeded like won't feel like a Cinderella run this year in a sense. Like there's just so many. There's just like a lot of equality, I guess, a lot like across like teams on the level that a lot of them are playing at. Okay. So I think it's going to be fun, but I think I would rather, I mean, it was really cool last year to see, I just put it in the email that I sent our bracket out with, like there was no 1 seed, 2 seed or 3 seed in the final four last year, which is like crazy. And so that was fun. I would love for there to be a couple front runners this year.
Yeah.
I think
that's understandable, especially coming off of last year. That makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think?
I know that I'm supposed to have my answer now and I'm like, no idea. I will do a bracket, and I had told you to, like, we'll do them with our kids because it's really fun to just pay attention to. I kind of feel the same way. Like, I'm good if, you know, kind of a normal favorite would win or Baylor. I mean, you know, I like to just pick these random teams that I love. So, you know,
you love Baylor, and they've had an okay year. So you might just pick them again.
Yeah, I might. Sometimes I definitely pick my bracket based on like heart and how I feel about the team. Nothing to do with actual basketball statistics or skill or anything like that.
Yeah, it is totally fair. Illinois has been getting a lot of love this year for like how well they've been playing, but they always play terribly in come tournament time. And I live in Illinois, and so I really like I would love for Illinois to do well, but I just hate because every year I just like don't put them forward in my bracket at all. I just like I just assume that they're going to lose, and it makes me so sad. So.
Womp womp. Well, we'll have to see what happens. It's gonna be fun. I'm excited that it's time for the tournament again.
I know. I'm excited too. So we have a very fun topic for today. A very important topic for the day. A little bit of a perspective shifter, I think, for some people at least. But we want to talk about how old content. Like, here's how I want to phrase it. I think today we want to talk about how the phrase or the idea of content having a shelf life is not always so like cut and dry. It's not always like this science or this kind of perspective that we need to hold on all of our content. I'm sure that some of our listeners have kind of heard like the phrases of like, I don't know, like, what do they say the shelf life of like an Instagram post is now? Like 12 hours or something? Or like, is it even shorter than that?
Well, it depends on what kind of post it is. Is it a reel? Is it a picture? Is it a carousel? Yeah. Lots of differences.
Yeah. And so like, there's this idea, I think that a lot of people sort of carry, especially if you've like seen posts like that, or like, just kind of like been around that language, is just this like idea that like content has a shelf life. And, we're just like kind of operating in this like sort of box where we're just envisioning that like whatever we create, eventually it stops being relevant. At some point, nobody's going to engage with it anymore. And that's not always the case. And especially like it is very true on social that like at some point, the algorithm itself is, going to stop showing a post or, start showing it less frequently. But there still is the human component. There are the people who go back through your feed. There are the people who, search for something specifically. And, when you start like going beyond that to platforms like blogs and podcasts and I mean, even emails, like there is just the fact that like those things still exist in the world. They still are, garnering traffic or getting shared by people or are showing up in searches or are just things that people just go back and listen to for whatever reason, even if it's 5 years old, because it is a topic that they're interested in or because, somebody mentioned it and they spent an hour searching for that specific, piece of content on Google or, whatever it is. And I think that we sometimes can limit ourselves on this perspective. So I have 2 quick stories and then would love to hear your thoughts on this. This has happened for us twice with clients before. We had one client come to us that we worked with a lot last year. And one of the like primary, I asked them like, what was kind of the tipping point? Like when did you, or like what was it that kind of, sparked you reaching out? And just like verbally, they just kind of told me, they were like, well, there's this post that you shared where you were at a conference and, we were just like, oh, like these people are committed to like getting better and like, whatever. And the last post that I had shared of being at a conference was like a year and a half before that. Like it was just like something that they had to like scroll back in my feed for. But it was something that like contributed to the sale. Like it was something that was used by them in the decision to ultimately work with us. That's not something that was like, that is a post that was past its shelf life, but still like played a role in our business. And then just recently I was talking with one of our clients and they were talking about how they listened to some of the episodes of our podcast before they chose to work with us. And I asked them, I was like, oh, I'm just like curious, like what episodes did you take the time to listen to? Because we have, 40 plus, like what did that look like? And they were like, well, I went back and I listened to the first 3 episodes and then I went and listened to the most recent 3. And I just thought it was so cool that like, somebody again, like took the time to go all the way back to episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, just to get a feel for like what our show is about, but just to take the time to listen to even our older content. And that, again, those first 3 episodes, which are not, featured on our podcast feed, you have to dig for those like back on YouTube or like on Apple Podcasts, whatever. They again played a role in people's decisions to work with us. And I just think it's a very important thing to recognize. So what thoughts do you have? I just talked for like 17 hours.
That was great. You did not talk for 17 hours. I would have been leaving on vacation by now if that was really true. Spring break time, guys. We're recording this episode before we hop on the road, but I do have thoughts.
Yeah.
I love this topic so much. I could go like, my brain is like firing so many different directions right now, but it really reminds me of like just the idea of like letting people be humans and like embracing that for a couple different reasons. Like number one, you just have to trust in the, human experience of like, they're not always going to tap the like button. We talk about this all the time. They're not always going to like leave you a review. You're not going to see who it was that listened, but like there is just that human behavior of consuming content and of, having their eyes or their ears on the things that you share, but then also trusting your audience and letting them be humans and letting them take in the content in whatever way that is. Like this person who's like, scrolling back and listening to the first 3 episodes. Like we always want to be strategic. We always want to consider analytics and just do things smart and well, but we have to leave room for that human component. Like we just can't track every little thing. And we don't want to, because then we don't have an audience we can connect with. Then we just have like robots out there. And so I don't know, that's just what was on my mind first. But I see this be true all the time for our clients. What you're saying about like the shelf life isn't just something we can keep in a box necessarily. I think about one of our clients who's growing rapidly on Instagram right now, and her reels will randomly, like the ones we share from this week will do great, but then we will have a reel that's from like 3 months ago that all of a sudden starts blowing up again. And some of that is just like, we laugh and we're like, oh, the algorithm, the system, like it's not against you, but sometimes it is a little confusing. But again, like that's why we just continue to share the same message and the same, those same buckets of the things we're talking about, and just remaining consistent with our audience, because you don't know what thing is going to resonate, or like what thing will come back around, or what will, all of a sudden just be something that people connect with. And then, it gets another circulation through things because of all that engagement. So I guess I'm just co-signing this topic and saying, absolutely.
Co-signing matters. Is important.
Yes. 5 stars. I recommend.
The other day we were talking about that client who said that they listened to the first 3 episodes of our podcast. And you and I were just talking about like the complexity from an analytics perspective. There are not a lot of people who go back and listen to the first 3 episodes of our podcast, or of any podcast, for that matter, unless it's like a serial show. In your analytics report that we get from our podcast host every week, it goes through like, here were your top episodes, or like you can see, every episode, but like I can guarantee episodes 1, 2, and 3 were like really far at the bottom of that list. Like it wouldn't even be something that I take note of. Somehow those got downloaded. It's easy to sort of like brush it aside. Again, it's shifting that perspective in our mind of like, we view it as just this like drop off, but instead like learning to just view this as things that are like working for you. And, like even like starting to take that perspective and like, think about how you can leverage that old content. There's probably some of those old conversations that like we should be sharing more. Clearly they connected. They might not be presented as well as some of our more recent episodes. They might have things that we would like frame or say differently now, but there's still like a very real kind of like representation of who we are or have been as an agency. And I just think it's I think it's like really interesting. And it's just an important reminder of like not to discount those smaller levels of like analytics. Even if something isn't constantly going, up and to the right, it doesn't mean that it has all of a sudden lost all value for your business. If you are, writing a blog that's like primarily for the purpose of like long-term ranking, like for SEO purposes, you're going to share that blog to your audience. You're going to, try to get some like extra traffic, like at the very beginning of its creation. And so you're going to see like a little bump, and then it's going to drop. And then you're going to see like it kind of, steadily go back up over time, and fluctuate with the, with the, whims of the people that you're trying to reach, with what they're searching and what they are, needing in a given month. And the like ups and downs don't always just mean failure or mean that like this has suddenly lost its value. And I think that holds, some interesting takeaways for a lot of content marketers specifically.
I think of the person listening who's like, how do I beat the system? How do I win the game? Like, okay, so you're saying, analytics do matter, analytics don't matter. You have to be somewhere in the middle, keep your perspective. And I think the way you win is 2 things come to mind. You need to be consistent, but that means you need to be consistent for what you can do and how that looks for you. So this is why we preach consistency. This is what we do with our own clients. This is what we try to do with our own content ourselves too, is say the things that matter to you, that are true about your brand. Don't feel like you have to go, chase every last trend and whim and thing, say what's true to you and be consistent with it. But again, like we have a couple of great episodes on this topic about how consistency doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. So what can you do over time that allows you to like share content you love to do, share content that's fun for you, that's exciting, that accomplishes your purposes, but doesn't burn you out, and just keep going. Like that's how you win this game, is just keep going, keep being consistent. And you're going to have content out there in a, huge variety of places for people to be able to interact with you, to interact in a human way. And that's kind of the beauty of, how you win at this, and how you see some of those same stories be true for you when people come to you and you're like, how'd you hear about me? Or where did you find this? Because you just kept showing up and putting stuff out there and putting opportunities to connect. When they have the opportunity, then people are able to connect.
I think one of the most interesting things about like content marketing as a whole is that like a lot of times, like just the fact that you're doing it is like noticed by people. Like even if they're not taking the time to like deeply engage with every piece of content, just the fact that they're seeing regular podcast episodes about this industry, or seeing, new blog posts, or just seeing like, oh, they posted again on social. I don't have time to read the post, but like I'm taking note of the fact that they did. Like it puts this like expertise, and it puts this kind of like even like that alone, just like people recognizing that you're sharing content is like a big trust builder. And like we talk about the phrase like integrated content marketing all the time. And, oftentimes like that can exist like on the same platform, like when you have been consistent for so long, like it's one of the things that people miss out on, for something like a podcast. If you do like 10 episodes and feel like, I haven't really gotten what I wanted from this, and, just stop creating, like you're losing momentum, but you're also just losing the value of just that longevity of consistency of like, I am showing up here. I'm continuing to add value. I'm adding value in this way. And then those things happen where people can come to your podcast. Like maybe they've seen you post 20 episodes, but they've never taken the time to listen. But now when they do, they can listen to 7 episodes because they find 7 episodes that are interesting to them. And you've built up the library, and they can see the fruit of that consistency. And it's like that, just this almost like confirmation of what they thought about you as they just look at that, and all of those pieces of content are working together to solidify your place in their mind for your industry. And I think like that alone, like you talked about consistency, like that alone holds so much value. And that alone, like when people can see that, even if less people are listening to episode 1, like episode 1 is still playing a role in what that library of content represents. Like it still is acting as like, this is the marker for how long we've been creating content. And this is something that you can see and is proof of our consistency and our expertise. I think that's a big piece of it too.
Yeah. I think we talk about how consistency builds trust. And I think part of that is that it builds trust because they're reading and listening and taking in your content. But part of it builds trust because they just know in the back of their mind, this person keeps showing up. And that's what we all want on our team, is somebody who just keeps showing up for us. So I think there's a lot of power there.
So I think to close, I just want to say that like, I feel like this topic can often be a barrier for people to like continue with their content marketing strategy, or to like start it in the first place. Like I think that it often can feel like, oh, there's this shelf life of content. Like, oh, my Instagram post is only going to exist for 12 hours or whatever. Like I probably just shouldn't do that. And I think like that that perspective is just such a bummer, because it's such a simplistic way to look at content marketing, to look at it as individual pieces doing individual things, instead of a kind of like robust strategy that is working together to create trust and, build community and, create connection between your brand and the people that you're trying to reach. And so I think I just want to leave all of our listeners with just that encouragement of like, every piece of content that you do create matters. Even if you are seeing, a decrease in engagement on that individual piece over, say a week or 2 weeks or, a year, even if you're seeing that decrease, it doesn't mean that that is no longer playing a piece in the strategy as a whole, or no longer playing a part in how people are perceiving you and perceiving your brand. So I hope that is an interesting kind of thought to sort of like chew on today, and hopefully is a bit of a perspective shift if you have been kind of struggling with whether to continue or whether to start content marketing as a whole. But every piece of content that you create matters. So we will leave you with that, and we will see you right back here on the next episode of Marketing Should Be Fun.